We have more breaking news to get to right now up in the Boston area now, that dramatic murder case of Karen Reed. It ended just a short time ago, and it ended in a mistrial. The jury said they just fundamentally could not agree on whether this woman murdered her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, back in 2022. So a mistrial was declared. Let's bring Misty Marris in on this, a trial attorney, legal analyst, who joins us right now. So this was, they went, I think, 3 times back and forth. They said not only could they not agree, but the terminology that the jury used was that they were starkly divided. So you get the feeling they weren't even close. What do you make of it?
Well, we heard on Friday that the jury was at an impasse. They went to the judge, informed the judge of such, and the judge said, well, this is a little bit premature. So come back, think about it, come back on Monday and continue to deliberate. Well, early in the day, Connell, the jurors came back and said they were still at an impasse. And that's when what's called a dynamite charge. You've heard it. It's called the Allen charge. In Massachusetts, it's called the Tui Rodriguez charge. It's a last-ditch effort to get the jury to agree. Go back into that deliberation room, listen to each other, and see if you can come to a consensus. Shortly thereafter, they came out, they said they're in an impasse. But something about this signaled, even last week, I thought to myself, I wonder what they're confused about, because they didn't ask many jury questions for such a complicated case. And I have a feeling what we're going to find is the third element of each of the charges, the element that is the same for all, whether or not Karen Reed hit O'Keefe. If they can't agree on that, then no matter what degree, you remember there's 3 degrees of murder here, it's irrelevant if that one issue could not come to a consensus with the jury.
If they didn't even have agreement that she took her car, an SUV, and ran over her boyfriend, Mr. O'Keefe. So background real quick on this for those who haven't been following it as closely. Who's Karen Reed? It's a woman up in the Boston area. This trial was in a suburb of Boston, Dedham, Massachusetts, who's accused of literally running over her boyfriend, who was a Boston police officer, with her SUV. There's a look at the two of them, Reed and O'Keefe. But Reed, from the beginning, she said she was set up, that there were a bunch of crooked cops working with O'Keefe, and they were the ones that really were responsible for it, and they set her up to take the fall. It got a lot of attention. There were a lot of people outside the courtroom every day supporting Reed. Speaking of outside the courtroom, moments ago, Reed's attorney had this to say. Watch.
I want to send a message to all of her supporters out there. Your support was invaluable. We are touched, and we ask for your continued support. I'm not from Texas, like my colleagues here. I'm a Boston kid, but I'll repeat what he said, which is, we ain't got no place.
All right, David Yannetti, and he's right. There were a lot of people out there supporting her for what it's worth. It became a spectacle outside the courtroom. But I want to go back to your point, Misty, which is that the fundamental issue in this case, if she's being accused of murder, is that she took her car and ran over her boyfriend, and you think the jury just couldn't even come to an agreement on that. Why?
Right. The defense raised what's called a third-party culprit defense. And at the onset of this trial, Connell, I was so skeptical because it was asking the jury to believe that there was a widespread cover-up by law enforcement in this case. And that just sounds a little bit far-fetched and something difficult for the defense to present to the jury. But as the trial unfolded, the defense presented evidence which showed that this investigation had a significant amount of impropriety. An investigator took the stand. Some questionable text messages came out. There were some phone calls between individuals the defense said were involved that they claimed to be accidental butt dials. Just a lot of it didn't make sense. And keep in mind, from the defense perspective, you're trying to raise reasonable doubt. You don't have to prove that somebody else did this, but you can raise doubt in the jurors' minds. So the charges, they started off with a high degree, intentional murder, then manslaughter, and then basically getting into an accident, leaving the scene of an accident that causes death. So different intentions, but the last element of all of those required the jury to be unanimous that she actually hit O'Keefe, that she caused his death beyond a reasonable doubt. And it doesn't seem they could get there with what the defense was able to chip away at that investigation, and using this investigator who took the stand with these messages that showed a bias against Karen Reed. So the defense really kind of pulled out a miracle here. This is rarely successful in the courtroom.
Right. Well, this time it does lead to a mistrial. And again, the jury note said that they were starkly divided. Misty, thank you. Misty Marris on the breaking news in the Karen Reed trial from the